So everybody, thanks so much for listening to Fire Breathing Rob. Whether you're listening to us on the podcast, the YouTube, or on the radio, we thank you so much. If you are listening to us on one of the internet devices, please subscribe, like, and share. Thanks so much. We're really pushing that as far as that goes. We have Jenny Valentish on, and she's talking about her new book. In just a second, she'll be talking. It's called Everything Harder Than Everyone Else, Why Some of Us Push Ourselves to Extreme. So, Jenny, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. And I know it's early where you're at right now, so thanks for getting up early with us, I should say, too.
Thanks, Rob. Well, it's 9 a.m. Look, it's not that bad. I've been up a few hours, I must admit.
Okay.
I'm in Melbourne, pretty much, that kind of area of Australia.
Just tell the viewers that don't know you a little bit about yourself in general.
Okay, yeah. So you can probably hear I'm English. I'm a journalist. I started off in sort of music journalism, and I was a music PR. Then I moved to Australia, and I was editing magazines like Time Out and a music magazine, and I started writing books. I've written a novel that was set in the music industry, Cherry Bomb, and an addiction memoir, Woman of Substances, which was really kind of trying to delve into all the reasons why people get addicted, and look at things like how it crosses over with temperament and personality and neuroscience and stuff like that. And then the latest one, as you mentioned, Everything Harder Than Everyone Else, is all about people who push their bodies to extremes. And I chose that title. It's actually a rip-off of a Motorhead album, Everything Louder Than Everyone Else. And I thought, it's just got so much bravado in it. I love it. I'm going to use that.
You did talk about yourself, but I want to talk about Muay Thai and just about what that is in general for the people that don't know. And how did you get involved in that?
Yeah, well, Muay Thai is a cocktail and not a very nice one. Muay Thai is
okay, sorry.
So everyone does it. Muay Thai is Thai kickboxing. Yeah, so I got into it. God, I've always just needed somewhere to put my energy. I've always been super restless and kind of like boisterous and aggressive. And when I discovered Muay Thai, it was like, okay, I found my thing. And I loved the sense of competition, like this sanctioned aggression where you get to stare into someone's eyes and like, if the rest of the world disappears, it's just you two duking it out. So that was all very appealing and very challenging. And so while I was writing this book about other people's extreme pursuits, I thought, well, I'll try and by the end of this book have my first amateur fight. And COVID nearly tripped the whole thing up because all the gyms were shut, as you know. But eventually, like literally the week that I was due to hand my manuscript in, I got my fight. And it was in front of a few thousand people under these grand chandeliers. It was good. It wasn't just like an amateur fight in a gym. It was the proper experience. And so, yeah, I got to have that parallel mission at the same time and experience what it's like to really have your ego trip you up and try and, explore, is rage like a good fuel for fighting, or does that trip you up? So all the things that I thought my interviewees were probably going through, I got to experience on a slightly more modest level.
So how did the fight go? That's the question.
Well, I came second, but that's okay, because literally the thing that I wanted to do was get through the ropes in front of an audience, go through 3 rounds and survive, and I did it. So look, to carry on, then obviously you'd want to be winning.
Right, of course. Yeah.
But for that first time, I was like, I really didn't care. I was on such a massive high that literally anything could have happened.
When we look at the aggression level, and then maybe, if you're upset or you're going through tough times, there's the aggression level, and then there's maybe like a therapeutic level, whether it's yoga, whether it's, talking to a therapist. What do you feel like is the difference between both of those? Obviously, there's the aggression, but is there one that's better, or is it just better for certain people, the aggression or the therapy? What do you think?
Better for certain people. I mean, so let's say, for instance, you went to see a shrink about anxiety or addiction, whatever it is, they're bound to prescribe yoga and meditation. And I think that's rubbish. Like, not everyone is suited to that. Not everyone can sit still and be in their own thoughts comfortably. And so the people in my book, I kind of nicknamed them the natural born leg jigglers, because when I interviewed them, their legs would all be jiggling away. I'm like that too. I'm fidgeting off camera a lot. And so, they're not suited to sitting still and meditating or doing yoga. So they found things like, I interviewed a bare knuckle boxer, a deathmatch wrestler, bodybuilders, all that good stuff. They found things that really help them sort of express that aggression, but in a very disciplined way. Like, you really have to get your ego in check to do these kind of combat sports. And you always need some kind of a mentor or a coach, so that's pretty healthy too, hopefully. But I found that pretty much everyone I interviewed had some kind of childhood adversity going on and something to prove to themselves, which shouldn't come as any surprise, because, we always think of the trope of the tortured artist, but that's nothing compared to the tortured athlete. I think to have that kind of single-minded focus to push through pain on a daily basis and like confront your mental demons on a daily basis, you have to have gone through some dark shit already.
So when we talk, and you talk about this in the book, meeting with these people and talking with them about the pain, I know you can dive into this more as we speak about it, the BDSM, the boxer, the bodybuilder, the porn star. We talk about all these different people in the book. When they talk about pain, how do they express that, their love for pain, thriving off it, and, really like being able to take this, where a lot of people, they can't take this stuff. They just, crap out.
Nobody expressed it in terms of loving it, but everyone had a capacity for it that most people don't. And so I guess there was some bloody-minded kind of pride in that.
Is that just genetic, Jenny? Sorry to interrupt you. Is that genetic, do you feel like? Or is that just because, like you stated, they went through all these tough experiences throughout their life, and that's their way of kind of, accomplishing that in as far as feeling better about themselves?
Yeah, it's not genetic at all. It's about having something to prove, really, to themselves. Often it's kind of like, I would describe it as pressure testing yourself. Like, you've been through some terrible things in the past, and then people want to test themselves, like maybe putting themselves in the ring or whatever it is, or going to a BDSM dungeon to make sure they can still withstand stuff in the future. Like, it's a constant testing. So one person who's a strongman athlete and powerlifter, she told me about this major study by sports psychologists, and it said they looked at all these super elite athletes, gold medalists at the Olympics, and then they looked at elite athletes, so still pretty good but not right at the top. And they found that all the super elite athletes had experienced really traumatic things in childhood, so that it gave them that extra edge, gave them that ability to think, well, I've been through worse than this.
So we're talking about like sexual abuse, verbal abuse, stuff
and
like that then.
Terrible divorces, death of somebody, just something that would have made them feel really isolated.
Jenny, my thing is, when you were, starting this book in general and going through, as far as writing it, where did you find all these people from all these different backgrounds and professions in general?
Well, I'm fairly entrenched in the local wrestling scene, as in, pro wrestling, not kind of Olympic wrestling. And so I found Crackerjack the Mad Bastard, who is a deathmatch wrestler who I already knew him. He does things like he makes all these homemade weapons, like he's got a baseball bat with a cactus attached to it with barbed wire, that kind of thing. And they consensually beat each other up with these silly weapons in the ring. So I knew those kind of people. And then it was a question of like, I really want a bare knuckle boxer. I'm just going to look through who is out there. And I thought it would be really interesting to get a woman as well. So I found Christine Pereira, who's signed to Bare Knuckle FC. And so some of it was just literally, I want somebody who does this. And then who can I find who's maybe somebody who's already written a memoir, somebody who's given what they do a lot of thought, because a lot of athletes are really closed books. They don't want to talk to journalists. Either they're being told not to, their gatekeepers are very strict compared to the arts, or maybe I just haven't really given it much thought. So I really had to find people who, they weren't necessarily top of their game, but they had some really interesting insights.
well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there someone that, stapled their head or something like that, or let you staple them or something?
Yeah, that's Crackerjack, the guy I just mentioned. So I've got
Okay.
my book launch in Melbourne next week, and he's going to bring his staple guns, so I can just keep firing them into him while we're talking together.
Oh man, gosh.
Yeah, really loves it. So that's really interesting, actually, because he got injured in the ring. He got a DVD player repeatedly smashed over his head, which he knew was going to happen, but he hadn't tested it out beforehand, and it was more solid than he realized. So he actually got a brain injury that
Wow.
has made him sort of permanently off balance. So he's been going for this rehab for years. And so he's been in this predicament of, what do I do with that natural agitation, which found a home in the ring? He could storm around the ring screaming at his opponent and, bloodletting, basically. And that was all acceptable. What do you do when you can't do that anymore, when you've got that kind of big personality? So it's really interesting, this book, to look at how all of us cope when something like the pandemic comes along and just rips the carpet out from under us and we can't do the things we want to do anymore.
Jenny Valentish here on Fire Breathing Rob. Again, everything harder than everyone else. Definitely check it out on Amazon and all bookstores in general. Jenny, my thing is, when you hear these stories and when you were, listening to these people talk about these experiences, did you ever kind of cringe and feel like, oh,
I have quite a high tolerance to that kind of thing. So for instance, with the BDSM male dominant, he's very imposing looking. He looks like an off-duty fascist. He's very big. He blocks out the light, but he's also really quite caring, thoughtful guy, and you're safe in his hands. You basically talk to him beforehand about what you're prepared to do and what not, and he's providing a service. And his explanation was, sometimes it's people who already are in some kind of pain, like they have some kind of chronic pain going on, and weirdly it's kind of a relief to feel pain somewhere else that draws their attention away from the existing pain. So that's one reason people might do it. But also, he said people feel like they can go back to work, having spent an hour with him, feeling like they can face anything. They've maybe just been hung upside down from a meat hook, wrapped in cling film or whatever it is. And then they go back to the office and they can, go to a board meeting or whatever it is and feel like nothing's as intimidating as that.
As we go to the end of the interview, can you tell people what you feel like they should get out of the book, or what you hope they get out of the book in general?
Well, I think sports psychology, to put it crassly, is like psychology on steroids, because athletes are like a heightened version of the human experience. Their lows, their triumphs, their disappointments, their cheating, their falling from grace, whatever it is. It's like our lives, but heightened so much. So I think they're a really good lens with which to look at our own lives. So even if you're not into going to a BDSM dungeon in your lunchtime, hanging from flesh hooks, or doing what any of the athletes in my book do, I think their insights into the human experience and human condition are really relatable, and people who are not into sport at all have got quite a lot out of this book.
And as we end, Jenny, again, Jenny Valentish here on Fire Breathing Room. Again, the book is Everything Hotter Than Everyone Else. Definitely check it out. Jenny, as we end, where can people find the book, and where can they find more about you in general?
Well, for me, I mainly just keep it all to Instagram, and I'd love to see you there. So it's Jenny Valentish, VALENTISH_public. And then the book, you can get it from, all the normal places like Barnes and Noble, Amazon. You just Google it, Everything Harder Than Everyone Else, and it will, or maybe even in your local bookshop, who knows?
All right. Again, Everything Harder Than Everyone Else. Jenny Valentish, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Rob. That was fun.